Good morning and welcome to the CFB version of the Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Deuces85, aka the niche sports connoisseur, your neighborhood contrarian, Captain Leverage, whatever you want to call me. Don't call me late for dinner, breakfast, or lunch. We're here to talk about the CFB main slate, Week 11. Final hour before lock, we are going to talk any last-minute questions you might have, injury news, core plays, props, prize picks, anything. This is your show. You guys guide it. I will circle around to Twitter, Discord, the YouTube chat, everywhere to answer those questions as we go. Do not forget about the promotion going on right now. Still can get 50% off your first month of any subscription on ftndaily.com. The code to use there is NIGHTHOOPS, NIGHTHOOPS. That's 50% off. Huge deal. Gives you the opportunity to check out and see what FTN Network is all about. We offer pro sports, niche sports, esports, college sports, everything. And it's not just written content, daily written content, but we have projections, we have optimizers, we have a myriad of tools for the NFL. We have coverage for the NBA, pre-lock shows that can be only seen by the subs. The community is great in our Discord. We have Discord members who frequently will post injury news, relevant stuff happening. Sometimes I have to get pulled away. We just have a really great community that helps each other all win. Also, PrizePicks tracker, UD trackers, betting trackers. There is just everything you could possibly need to be a successful and competitive DFS player at ftndaily.com. So use that code NIGHTHOOPS, 50% off. The other way you can really help me out if you feel so inclined, make sure that you take a second, hit the like button. I know that all the YouTubers got to beg for likes, and I'm not trying to beg for likes, but it does really help. Make sure that you share, retweet, all of that good stuff. If I have helped you win any money over the last couple of weeks or this season, the way to, kind of show your appreciation, if you will, is not to tip me or any of that stuff. I would never, expect that. But if you can share the show, promote it with me, at least a retweet, a like, any of that good stuff, comment, that all helps me. So I do appreciate that. And a lot of you have been passing along the information, and we've seen a very nice influx of new subs to our community, and FTN continues to grow. Really solid night at college basketball last night. We've had a great first week. Now we hit this chalky CFB slate here, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff here over the next 45 minutes. Hey, Chase, my man Chase says, seems like picking the right 5K receiver is going to be crucial. Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of overlap with quarterback and running back. So receiver is definitely going to make a difference, but there's also going to be a lot of overlap with them. Hey, it's my man, the Ram fan. He is back, finally apart, not to put you out here, man, but, he was a long-time community member years and years ago when I was doing Blog Talk Radio. But he traded me in for a newer, more attractive model. But, the grass isn't always greener. So my man's back here hanging out with us, spending time with the FTN family. Always good to see you, my man. All right, so let's do some housekeeping and check out the injury news, anything relevant here for any of the slates. Now, FanDuel Main, of course, has games that are on the night slate for DraftKings. So that's going to maybe confuse some of you, but I'm going to be talking about some of those games as well. Like, for instance, LSU, their running back situation there. There is a good chance Logan Diggs misses out. He is doubtful as of 15 minutes ago. That means Noah Kang, Jay Williams, a couple of guys there, depending on who ends up starting for LSU, is going to make a lot of sense. They're very cheap on that FanDuel slate, and they're very cheap on the DraftKings night slate as well. So keep that in mind as you are building your FanDuel lineups and you need some salary relief for some of these really, really elite expensive options. The drama that is Jalen Daniels not warming up as of this moment. So, you're going to see Bean. That's kind of where we're at with the Kansas quarterback situation always. Tulsa will be without one of their best wide receivers and shoulders, and then Jaquindon Jackson of Utah, officially listed as questionable. Running backs are usually the way to target against Washington, but we'll see what his status is as we go on here. Hey, Day, absolutely. FanDuel players, yes. Why don't we start there? Because you know what? FanDuel has been offering some really nice contests for college football. And I did have FanDuel information in the article, and we also talked about on Thursday night a little bit of a player pool, but I've had more time now to go through and look at that. So we can absolutely talk about some FanDuel guys. So let's start with FanDuel, and we'll start at the quarterback spot and who we actually like here on FanDuel. John Rice Plumlee, JRP, 9.2K on FanDuel. Makes a lot of sense, right? We like him. Dual threat, starting to get healthy. His lethal rushing upside makes him one of the better plays of the slate on FanDuel. Also really like Carson Beck. I know he kind of blanked, 19, 20 fantasy points last week, but going up against Ole Miss, this is a team that, likes to push the pace a bit, and there's going to be a lot of fantasy goodness. Carson Beck is a really nice option there. I usually always say Jaden Daniels. Any slate he's on, I got a plan, but 12.5 is super steep, really difficult. 3K discount to JRP. We definitely have to do it. If you had like a couple of throwaway GPP lineups you could make, get Jaden Daniels. Certainly if you're an MME or you play, 3 to 5 lineups minimum, you do not want to be fading Jaden Daniels in all of them, regardless of how expensive he is. I know Cade Klubnik, who's 8K on FanDuel, is getting a ton of ownership because Georgia Tech is pretty crummy, right? And there's going to be some points scored here. But I have a really hard time getting behind Cade Klubnik and just doesn't really move the needle for me. Drake May is 10-6 there on FanDuel. He's kind of the guy I would want to play with JRP. We're a big proponents here at the show and an FTN Network in general of 4 running backs. But on FanDuel, I tend to want to play 2 quarterbacks because of the way that their scoring is. So playing Drake May, who is 10-6, still almost 2K cheaper than Daniels, who I still love, and JRP together is a very elite move that you can do a lot of damage with. So that's kind of where my head is at. Also, always love West Virginia's Garrett Green, another fairly elite dual threat option at the quarterback position going up against an Oklahoma team that defensively has fallen apart the last few weeks. They give up a ton to mobile quarterbacks, and Green has an adequate enough wide receiver room where he can do some damage through the air as well. So that's kind of the group there. And then, Noah Fifta at 10-4 for Arizona. He's less of a priority there as opposed to DraftKings, but still an obvious, really good play. Running back, Ollie Gordon, and Ollie Gordon. We'd have to just plug him in every site. I mean, it's ridiculous how well he's playing. I know it gets difficult if you start talking about playing Daniels and Gordon. Gordon's almost 12K, so we got to get some cheapies somewhere, but it's just, I don't think we can afford to fade him. And it's a lot more difficult on FanDuel to fit Ollie Gordon and Taj Brooks together, which is a priority for me. And I know Jonathan Brooks is also going to be fairly heavily owned on that slate from the Texas side, but I think Taj Brooks and Ollie Gordon are just a priority that has to be used. You do get some salary relief at the running back position via Monty Bailey of TCU at 7.2. Will Shipley, 7K, expected back today. Jason McClellan at 7.1 for Alabama. You do have a 6'8 Jaquindon Jackson, assuming he does play. Montrell Johnson at 6'3 in a very favorable matchup against LSU. So we have some cheaper running back options that we can certainly use here and feel, I think, pretty good about. Omarion Hampton at 10.2. We're just not going to be able to get there because of the May price and everything else, but he's also very, very good today overall in all formats. Love the Quinshon Judkins price at 8.4 there on FanDuel. I know it's against Georgia, but Judkins is just a machine. That's really too low for him. He's got a lot of upside there. One of my favorite GBP plays over on FanDuel today by far. Looking at the LSU running back situation, Noah Cain, if he starts, at the very least, even if he doesn't start, he's probably going to get 10 to 15 touches minimum, right? It's only 4.6 on FanDuel, which is a true gift, and we need value there. We can use him. So make sure that you kind of plan ahead for that LSU running back news and leave yourself with 1, maybe 2 swaps there for before that game. Josh Williams is 5.4, also extraordinarily cheap. My preference would be Cain, but either of them will work for our lineups. At the wide receiver / tight end positions, all about Arizona, right? Tetroya McMillan, Jacob Cowing, but $7K for Ladd McConkey on FanDuel is a very good price. I think they're going to have to air it out because of the way that Ole Miss plays. Look for McConkey to have a solid, 7-8 targets minimum. 100-yard days certainly on the table for McConkey, and at $7K, that's just a real nice gift. Rashad Owens at 6'9", also in play, targeted 10-plus times last week. And then, of course, the UCF receivers, always cheap. You can get Javon Baker at 6'4". That's a really nice price. We're playing JRP on FanDuel, which we definitely are. We have that option as well as Kobe Hudson at 6K. Xavier Townsend, if you really want to get crazy, at 5K, depending on how healthy he is. So there's some definite cheapies here on FanDuel that we can utilize here and really make a pretty damn good lineup on FanDuel. Typically, their player pools have been a little bit stronger than DraftKings just because they have so many games, which makes it kind of difficult. But I'm certainly liking the way that FanDuel lineups are shaping up. Chase says, Athens native here, hearing Brock Bowers will suit up. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you guys, I mentioned it last night on the CBB show that pulling double duty today and beyond to infinity, and not complaining by any means. I love doing it, but it's going to be a little bit of a rat race for me trying to keep up with the news. So by all means, if you guys see, over the next, 20, 30 minutes that we're talking and you see some news pop up that I haven't gotten to yet, feel free to blast that into the chat and I'll make sure to mention it. But that would be huge. Brock Bowers. I know he was a game time decision apparently, but I didn't know how much I actually believe that. And now I'm seeing more and more of it in the last 30 minutes, it looks like. So that's really, really interesting. Still like Ladd quite a bit. I have him on the later slate for DraftKings as well, but we'll see how that develops and what the news is there. All right. Let's do my rounds here, make sure I'm not missing. You did trade me in, Ram, but it's okay because you're back. You know where the biscuits get buttered. You know what I'm saying. Would I be crazy to play Milroe and cash? Maybe not crazy. Just it feels unnecessary. Really good play, but 9K, against Kentucky, which their defense is nowhere near the level it had been trending the last 2 seasons. I know he's coming off an absolute just slate-breaking performance against LSU, but the passing volume is going to be low. And unless we expect him to rush for 100-plus yards and, a couple ground scores, I just don't know that he's going to pay off the 9K. For GPPs, it makes a whole hell of a lot of sense, right, because he does have that upside. But there is a downside there, and that downside is around 15 to 18 fantasy points, which would be an utter disaster at 9K. So I think I need to make an important distinction here, because a lot of times when you say something like that, people are like, so you hate Jalen Milroe. No, I don't hate him. I don't think he's a bad play, but I do think there's way too much risk involved there. And you're talking to a guy who takes an exorbitant amount of risks in single entry contests and cash games for that matter, because I have a rule that says I just play good players, whether they're highly owned or not. So I like Milroe. I think he's fine, but JRP, obviously, Noah on the other side, it just Fafita, he's just been too good and he's too cheap, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense not to have those two guys in your main, or going 4 running backs, which is certainly on the table as well. We are very, very confident in our 4 running back build. So I'm with it. Answered that. Okay. Ramas said really stuck on Brooks or Ott decision. There are Taj Brooks to me is the decision there. If you're running some alt builds, then running Ott makes a lot of sense. Obviously, that game, it's kind of getting not ignored but overlooked a little bit because it is one of the last games on the slate. People are so zeroed in on Arizona, Colorado. Texas Tech guys getting a lot of love. There's just a lot of fantasy goodness here early on. I'm seeing a lot of ownership on Clemson guys too, which always makes me antsy. So Ott's a great GPP play as well. Low ownership expected there, or at least I think. I don't know that people are really going to be utilizing him too much. And I think with the pricing on the running back so high, we might actually get a depressed rostership number on Taj Brooks because he is 7-7, which would be great for all of us. All right, so just going to go back over a few things here while we're answering questions. The DraftKings core is still pretty locked in. Noah Fafita, Ollie Gordon, and Mekhi Hughes, the running back from Tulane. I just feel extremely confident with that one, and I'm not going to waver at all on that. As far as the FanDuel core goes right now, I'm looking at JRP, Taj Brooks, and Ollie Gordon. I know that's hard to do on FanDuel, but we did mention some of those value plays, and it's going to work out. I've got a kid down here messing around, which is great. So if you're noising in the background, sorry about that. All right, let's talk about what we project ownership to be overall here, starting at quarterback. I think it's really obvious that Noah Fafita is going to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate, the DraftKings slate for sure. And that's going to be a very obvious situation where he's going to be rostered by 60% or more of the people. Hey, can you go? All right. So that's number one highest owned quarterback, easily. Next up is going to be JRP. I think we're going to see a lot of lineups with both JRP and Noah Fafita in them. That just seems like a very obvious spot for both of those guys, and I don't see any reason not to roster them if you're going with the two quarterback lineup. But those are the very obvious chalky builds that we're going to see. Now, there is a lot of overlap today for a large slate. It's kind of a bummer. But there is going to be a lot of situations here today where you're staring down at 2v2, 3v3s at best, and that's never fun, but we're going to be racing some folks today. Cade Klubnik, I'm seeing so much chatter about Clemson. Obviously, the matchup is elite against Georgia Tech. I just can't get behind Klubnik. I know 8K is a pretty tasty price there on FanDuel, but the fact that he's trending to be, one of, if not, the highest quarterback behind Noah even is not necessarily surprising to me, but it's ghastly. It feels very ghastly to me. Rounding out the top 5 highest owned quarterbacks, I would say, once my computer stops messing up. All right, there we go. Cam Ward, and I would love to say somebody like Fernando Mendoza, but I think Michael Pratt is going to see a chunk of ownership. The only thing keeping Pratt from being one of the highest owned, like top 2, is the fact that everyone and their mom's going to be running Hughes, and a lot of people are still hung up on the I can't play a running back with a quarterback thing. Obviously, you can in college football, and we've done it to a lot of success. So Pratt probably rounding out the top 5 there. You're going to get a lot of GPP upside and low rostership on a guy like Jalen Milroe, Jordan Travis, Brady Cook, Michael Penix, who we love but can't pay for him today in our main, guys like that. So you definitely know where most of that rostership is going to go. On the running back side, very obvious, Ollie Gordon. Like, I don't know, even in the large field GPPs, we're talking 50+% owned, right? Just it's almost silly, but 7.9 for Ollie Gordon, that's just way too cheap. Should have been 9K. Mekhi Hughes, very, very chalky as well. And then I think the rest of it will end up being some order of Taj Brooks, Jonah Coleman, RJ Harvey, and Devin Neal wedged in there as well. I know there's some talk and some love for the 4K running back from Minnesota, Jordan Newman. He makes a lot of sense. I find myself paying up at running back today, so I don't necessarily need that value from him. But depending on the way the carriers have been breaking out, Darius Taylor, who had been the bell cow early in the season, didn't suit up last week. So, the situation for Newman to get another 15 to 20 carries is right there and possible against a Purdue defense that's very fantasy friendly. And obviously it sticks out that he had 40 totes against Michigan State for 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. So a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, oh, wow. And even though Minnesota brought in a group of receivers this year and kind of made it seem like they're going to throw more, their bread and butter is still the running game, and they are still going to do that an awful lot. So the Newbin play makes a ton of sense for sure. At the wide receiver spot, as far as rostership goes, Lincoln Victor, he's just getting peppered with targets since he's been back from injury. Clearly, Cam Ward's #1 favorite weapon to use in the passing game. Then I think it's going to be Jacob Cowing to Troya McMillan. Those two, probably neck and neck. Jake Brenningstool of Clemson, because we're seeing all this Klubnik ownership. Brenningstool, I always say it's our showdown special, but he's really developed himself into a main team viable tight end, and he's aside from last week, he's been targeted heavily. 20 targets in the past 2 games prior to last week, and he's somebody that I think is going to get right back in the action here against Georgia Tech. So he makes a lot of sense there. And then I do foresee someone like Brennan Presley, because I'm seeing a lot of publications talk about him being in the top 5 for ownership there at wide receiver on DraftKings. I like Rashad Owens slightly more. There's a discount, of course. Like Leon Johnson, burned his red shirt last week. He's been productive, and Alan Bowen and him have a good connection. So I prefer those guys over Presley, but it does seem like Presley is going to carry some rostership here. As far as values across the board, we have a cheap quarterback. We're starting with in Arizona. We have the Jonah Coleman play with Wiley banged up again. He's very cheap. You can play them together. And then you have the Newbin kid from Minnesota. But the value wide receivers, which we haven't talked about yet, are plentiful as well. Jaden Dixon-Veal from Purdue is seeing a not a skyrocket in ownership, but he's certainly seeing a spike. Anytime you can get a guy that's playing a decent amount of snaps recently, getting targeted and making things happen at a min price, you certainly want to consider him, and you're going to see others with him as well. Total for the season, he's 6th on the target list, but he did nothing in the early part of the season. A lot of fit bidding, as they say, but he has 11 targets in the past 2 games, 8 receptions, over 60 yards, and a touchdown. And that was against Nebraska and Michigan being a tougher defense than most. So in a matchup here, this is a tough spot against Minnesota, but he doesn't have to do a whole lot. Reels in 2 or 3 receptions, and he's basically going to be at value. So depending on what he gets you as an upgrade, you can look there and feel okay about it. But need to temper expectations as well. Sometimes we get these 3K values, and it's like, oh my God, they only got me 8. What am I going to do? Well, that's pretty good. Tanner McLachlan, who is the 4K tight end for Arizona, just another way to get exposure to that game. Cowing and McMillan are going to see so much ownership. Tanner's not going to see very much at all. So this is a great way to not only give yourself salary savings, lineup flexibility, but also leverage around the rest of the field, because if Tanner ends up catching, let's say, at 1 to 2 touchdowns and Cowing doesn't, you're going to have a big leg up on the rest of the field. Daniel Jackson is operating as Minnesota's WR1 at the moment, has a fantastic matchup against Purdue. Minnesota's a running team. We know that, but 5'3", Jackson has been doing it lately. And then we have the other projected to be somewhat chalky value as well, or at least there's a lot of talk about him amongst the FTN Discord and what I'm seeing on Twitter. But Coy Eakin at 3.8 for Texas Tech. He's the one that I prefer if you have that 800 over Veal. He seems a little bit safer because we know there's going to be volume in this offense. I know the Texas Tech receiver room is super deep, but there is a connection developing here. And lately, Eakin's just been a really reliable target. And it seems to go in spurts. It'll be, Dre McCray 1 week, Xavier White 1 week. They'll go for a couple games, but 3 straight games, Eakin's been targeted 4+ times. He's had at least 2 receptions in each of the last 4. The 5 for 102 game against Kansas State was one of his best, but last week, the 8 receptions on 8 targets for 78 yards. We love any of that. 550 and a touchdown, 6 for 70. Coy's definitely going to be a guy, and he's going to see a big spike in ownership as well, just because there are a lot of good running backs to pay for, and this is a good way to do it. So it almost becomes contrarian to pay up for wide receiver, depending on what happens with Luther Burden of Missouri, who is now, I believe, expected to play. there would have been some value there on the Missouri side as well. But paying up for wide receiver, I think, is going to be somewhat of a contrarian play. We'll see burden ownership, but people might be a little bit scared. But imagine getting Jalen Polk this week at like 5%. You would never have thought that possible, but high prices. Matchup against Utah. People aren't really talking about the Huskies, so certainly a contrarian move. All right, going through here. What's up, Jason? What do we know about the Minnesota running back situation? Let's see. Let's check for updates, about that time. So this is the same report I saw earlier, but there are a few beats saying that he is expected to be out, Darius Taylor. So that would mean Newbin would get those bell cow carries and be the starter, which at 4K is obviously very appealing. So if you're looking to use him and you want a running back value and you want maybe somebody who's not Jonah Coleman, or maybe you already have 3 pieces of Arizona, then it makes sense because it does seem he's trending to be out. Jason asks, QB core for DK. Well, at this point, it should be obvious. Noah Fafita from Arizona. We're rocking with him. My number 2 quarterback is JRP, John Rice Plumlee. I am leaning / angling towards a 4 running back build. And just to give you guys a preview of the next couple of slates, the night and late night, I think 4 running backs works on those slates as well. So if you're a card-carrying member of the Church of 4 running backs, today is the day you've been waiting for, my friends. Yeah, we had a special guest on Thursday, Michelle, aka that Michigan chick that you're referring to, Samaj Morgan. Is he viable for main team on DraftKings? I would say no. That is just a alt lineup GPP shot in large field. 3.5. He did have, a decent game there. What he had, that 44-yard rushing touchdown against Purdue. He's gotten a little chunk of work there. Certainly a guy that makes a lot of sense in the GPP's large field variety. I don't think we can justify using him in main, though, because we have Koy Aiken, who's kind of, solidified a spot, and he's in the, higher snap, playing a lot in an offense that warrants it. So I don't think that we can use him. But let's look up Morgan's production the last couple of weeks. So after doing pretty much nothing for the first 3 weeks, he's contributed at least a reception in 6 straight games, 3 targets in back-to-back games, 2 catches for 27 yards last week, 3 catches for 39 yards the week before, and a 7-yard touchdown against Indiana back in week 7. If they're going to be giving him carries, end around, whatever, it definitely makes him an intriguing play. Let me pull up the snap count report that I have, and we'll get to the bottom here and see what this looks like. By the way, did you guys like the special guest? Like, that's something Jake and I have been talking about, bringing someone on for a segment that's an expert in, one of the teams in the game that we're talking about. So say we bring on somebody who really knows the Kansas program, and they're going to give us the what's what on breaking down that game and relevant betting stuff, props, PrizePicks, DFS, all that good stuff. So that's something that we're considering doing for the rest of the season, and possibly, if it works out, into next season. Won't be the same kind of special guest each week, but kind of break it up and diversify a little bit with the opinions on the show. All right, so looking at snap counts, not great. Let's see. So 29% in the game before last, and then 18% of snaps last week, which is slightly trending up from his season total. But that just means that when he's on the field, there's a good chance he's going to get the ball. He's not out there to just block, or not get opportunities. So he's just not all that to tell you, no, you can't use him in the main. But I certainly want to have exposure to him, because that'll be a hell of a call if it works out. Best wide receiver, 4,100 or under on DraftKings. So probably for me, it's Coy Aiken from Texas Tech. Just talked about him, just trending in the right direction. I know Texas Tech has that deep receiver room. He could very easily give us 2 for 20 today, but he's so cheap. Like I said, trending in the right direction. Just feels like a really good, solid play to me. You could also go with the tight end from Arizona at 4K, Tanner McLachlan, who is kind of a sneaky PPR look and somebody who can perform quite well. Or go down to the 3K Purdue receiver that we've been chatting about. Any FanDuel early plays? Now, let's see here. The way that, I mean, pretty much what I've already talked about. You know, they just put the first wave of games into its own slate, and I think what it added Indiana, Illinois, or something, right? Boston College as well, maybe. Thomas Castellanos against that Virginia Tech rush defense. That seems like a very favorable spot as a dual threat running quarterback. He is 11K there, but I'm definitely on board with using him. I think he's a fantastic option. Taj Brooks, of course. Devin Neal is good there. Will Shipley is good there. Maffa is pretty good there still because of the matchup. Now I know that Maffa, for those of you who didn't watch the Thursday show, me especially, will own takes that are good and takes that are bad. And the Maffa fade obviously didn't work out. He had a career game against one of the best defenses in the country. So kudos to him. That was one that we missed. And I know that angered at least one individual who told me I didn't know what I was doing in the comments. I just figure that means I made it. But that's kind of where my head would be at for the early slate there. What wide receiver would you pair with JRP? So you don't have to because of his rushing upside. But I do think it's a great idea to get multiple pieces of this game besides Ollie Gordon and JRP. And I think a lot of people might just stop at those two. There's just going to be really a big lack of defense in this contest. Now, on FanDuel, I think you can get to Baker pretty easily and feel good about it. On DraftKings, where we need that savings, I do lean Kobe Hudson. And I know Baker's been more consistent than Hudson, especially during the second half of the season. But to start it off, weeks 2 through 4, Hudson was just an unstoppable machine. 5 catches for 134 yards, 6 catches for 150 yards, 5 catches for 138 yards. Absolutely nails. 2 catches for 45 yards last week will probably mean that he's on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to rostership, but there's big upside in this matchup. And we saw against West Virginia, he came through in a big way. We were talking about him during that particular matchup as well. 3 catches for 66 yards, 2 of which went for a touchdown. So I really like Kobe Hudson here. You're looking at the snaps. I mean, he's playing a lot. They're targets wise, they're relatively similar between those two. You see Javon Baker with 54 targets, Kobe Hudson with 48. Next closest is Xavier Townsend with 33. And then, you know, it's really just all of that usage to those 3 players. And really Hudson and Baker are going to get a lot. And their numbers are remarkably close. 33 receptions for Baker, 29 for Hudson, 678 yards to 631, and 5 touchdowns to 4. So why not take the discount there? I know that the recency bias is strong sometimes, and Baker has been the far more productive receiver since week 4. But it could easily swing. The pendulum could swing the other way, and it could be Hudson that ends up having the big game here for a slightly depressed price. So I do like the idea of playing Hudson with JRP. I don't mind the idea of playing Harvey with JRP in another GPP lineup. And then I think what a lot of people will do on the on paper optimal to run JRP naked. So you can expect to see a lot of that. Not that we want to see him naked or anything, but you know what I mean. If you can find one who isn't from Michigan, I'm all for it. Is that because you hate Michigan or you just didn't like Michelle? We're all open for criticism, constructive criticism. I don't mind. I always used to say on Blog Talk, like, this is your show as well as mine. So if you want to see something that I'm not doing that I can incorporate, I will. If there's something you didn't like and you want me to get rid of, and I will. So I'm sure that's just maybe a joke, but seriously, if if you're a Michigan hater or you just don't like Michelle, like, please feel free to let us know. For running back build, do you have Coleman in there? I don't. Hey, Johnny! Johnny's making an appearance. Johnny has known me for a long time. When I went to Vegas to get my dog, I saw Johnny down there. Good to see you, brother. That's a real friend there, contributing all the time, day and night. Anyways, I don't have Coleman, but I do have exposure to him. But in the main lineup, I don't. And that's not because I'm like some hardcore, like, I can't play my running back with a quarterback. I'm the polar opposite of that. But I just have, 4 other running backs above him. He's 5th on the list for me. So he just missed the cut, barely. I do have Fifita and McMillan. But obviously, if I had just because I don't have the 400 to get to Cowing, if I had the 400, I'd probably would just play Cowing. But I think the difference is negligible there. So I'm just taking the cheapest one. The running backs that I feel pretty strongly about needing to be locked in and just throw away the key and walk away, not even think twice about it. Ollie Gordon, obviously. Mekhi Hughes, obviously. And then Taj Brooks, who I think he's an obvious play because Kansas rush defense is terrible. There's going to be a lot of points scored. Brooks is just getting a massive amount of usage, 30-plus touches. But I think it's less obvious in terms of people are probably struggling to get him in. JRP, do they want to try to force Burden in? Can they even get to Lincoln Victor, who's going to be the super chalk receiver of the slate, and still play Taj Brooks? And I think the answer to that is probably no. So we might see Brooks ownership take a dip and be, less than what it should be. Because honestly, with what he's going to do today and how good he's been and his price and everything, he should be 45% owned. He probably won't be, but he really should be. And obviously, I'm happy if he's like sub 20%. I don't think we'll get that lucky, but there's going to be some tough decisions made by some here. To me, I just have it in my head to always pay up for running backs where possible and cheap out on wide receivers where possible. So that's how I'm typically building my lineups, and that's how I am typically building on most slates and definitely doing today. As far as the 4th running back, it comes down to the 2v2 I mentioned in the Discord earlier, which is JRP and the 3K receiver from Purdue, or RJ Harvey and somebody like, Jake Brenningstool. Right now I'm leaning in towards, or Coy again, I should say. Right now I'm leaning towards the RJ Harvey play because I think he can get just as much, if not more than Harvey for lower ownership. Price is right for him. The Oklahoma State rush defense, while not as bad, historically bad as UCF's, it's still really rough. And I think both running backs in this game are just going to eat like they're Ezekiel Elliott in a bowl of cereal. Just being a hater. That's fair, man. I appreciate it. Any thoughts on Cowing versus McMillan? No, I mean, yeah, but I don't have a hardcore preference for which one you should play. The answer is just like, if you ask me Cowing or McMillan, that's just the answer is yes. Play what your lineup will allow you to play. Have a alt GPP build with all them and with their quarterback, all 3. Looking at the targets, Cowing has 92 to McMillan's 76, but McMillan has been a little more efficient, 750 yards, 7 touchdowns, 52 catches compared to 68 receptions, 530 yards, 9 touchdowns. So again, difference is very negligible there. I wouldn't break your brain trying to pick, which one. Just get them both in various lineups. But if you can fit Cowing, play Cowing. If you need that, slight discount for McMillan, then play McMillan. Do not forget about their tight end, Tanner McLachlan, though. Jason says, go Bucks. Tampa Bay Bucks? Just kidding. The ETSU Bucks from college basketball? No. Got Dame Lillard. That's cool. All right, let's go back into Discord and see what the people are saying. Breaking news: Alabama has just emerged for pregame warm-ups. Jermaine Burton not among the wide receivers in uniform. Okay. Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik's right foot is well wrapped. He said on Monday was 100% and he expected to be 100% on Saturday. Tape is precautionary, but it'll be interesting to see how much he runs the ball. He was limited with his rushes last week. Okay. Interesting. Jermaine Burton is sick, may not be able to play against Kentucky. Saban also says Deontay Lawson, Jalen Key, and Ja'Cory Brooks will be out today against the Wildcats. Well. Okay. Alabama receivers now kind of coming up the list here because we've got, Bond there at 5'7". Might Kobe Prentice at 4'1" now jump into the conversation for value? I think he does. We have Kendrick Law at 3'7", maybe a little bit of an intriguing option, has 4 receptions in his past 2 games, starting to become a little bit relevant here, perhaps. Let's look at last week's snaps or last game's snaps. That's how we should do this. Of course, we can't get out of here without some slate breaking news that's going to mess everything up. I don't feel obligated to play an Alabama receiver for what it's worth. All right, Burton's playing over 80% of snaps, so that is a big deal. Isaiah Bond, 77% of the snaps last week. Malik Benson, 15%. Let's see, Brooks still out. Kendrick Law, 23%. Kobe Prentice, 30%. I think Prentice spikes a lot for what it's worth. That's really all I got. Not a lot of relevancy there. Prentice at 4-1, I think, is very viable. That is a real nice GPP value. Don't know that I would bump out like Brenning Stool from Clemson or Tanner from Arizona to get him in. But because I think Milroe and McClellan might just end up doing most of the heavy lifting today for Bama anyways. But Prentice is certainly in play, and he's not going to be very owned. And that's a great leverage piece for your large field GPPs there. As far as the, what was it, Klubnik news there with his foot being wrapped. It's been that way for a game or two, maybe more. You're not really using him for his rushing upside anyways very often. I mean, he can, but he's going to be throwing darts and dimes and up and down the field. So should be fine as long as he doesn't have to scramble. Getting some basketball questions, but we're not going to really address right now. Sorry. All right, we'll just do one more round through here. As far as like sneaks for this slate, I think they're, speaking of Michelle and the Michigan group, Samaj Morgan sort of invested there in a touchdown happening. Did sprinkle that one. But I actually think that the sneaks are going to be the Tulane passing game going up against Tulsa, because everyone just expects Tulsa to, roll over and let Mekhi Hughes just run all over them. And he will. He definitely will. They're giving up about a $150 on the ground. But they're giving up almost 300 passing yards per game. And I know throwing this at you right at the last minute, it's going to be like, well, damn, do we need to get the Tulane passing game? Don't blow up your lineups to do this, but if you've got some other builds that you're working on, we did mention it on Thursday that the passing game of Tulane should eat here. And Michael Pratt, as he continues to work his way towards 100% health, which he should be there basically at this point, he's got his rushing upside back. He's throwing crisp passes. He's extremely accurate for the most part, keeps his turnovers low. Just a very good, there's chatter about him transferring up into a power conference next season. He's just carries himself away that just, that guy's good. And he has 3 adequate receivers to throw the ball to. There are others as well, but a lot of the workload and usage is concentrated amongst these 3, Lawrence Keys, Jaquan Jackson, and Chris Brazell. Keys, 32 catches on 56 targets, 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. Jackson, 24 of his 41 targets, 420 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then Brazell, 26 catches on 39 targets, 433 yards, 2 touchdowns. Looking at that, the price on Keys is probably high at 6.2. not too high because he's not worth it, or that he's overpriced by any means, that we can't really fit that into the type of unit that we're on a building. We would have to sacrifice one of the Arizona receivers to play him, and I don't know if that's in the cards. However, I do like the idea of using Jaquan Jackson there at 5'2", second most targeted receiver on the team. People will look at his game logs and kind of shrug it off, but you see earlier in the season he had some really big games. Usually good for 2 to 3 catches and a potential, touchdown there. The nice thing about Jackson is they also give him carries. They utilize him. He's a versatile weapon. He has been given 5 carries this year. I know it's not a ton, but they are working him in that way. 51 rushing yards. So I like Jaquan Jackson there. And if you're going to run a Pratt lineup, Jackson is my preferred pairing partner with him. Brazel's right in the middle at 5'4". Will have minuscule ownership as well. 3 of his last 4 games, he has been over 7 fantasy points. 2 of the last 3 over double digits. Best line being a 3 for 103 game against Memphis. So he's certainly in play too, but I do think those Tulane receivers are very, very sneaky. Don't be surprised if they break the slate open. All right, PrizePicks. Let's get off of that. Too many football. PrizePicks still love the Garrett Green over 246.5 passing plus rushing yards prop. John Rice Plumlee over 271.5 passing plus rushing yards prop. Both of those, I mean, it would seem very obvious both should sail over 300. Green might be a little dicier there because of his inconsistencies with passing, but he will run for 100+ yards today. I'm very confident in that. And then Jarquez Hunter over 83.5 rushing yards. That was 79.5 on Thursday during the show, which I did give that as one of my favorites. So hopefully you got it there. If you didn't, it's still okay to play it up till about 86. I'm still very, very confident in 86. So you can play the over on that one. Somebody asked me which QB today for Arizona, which I don't know why. I don't think Jaden Delora, unless you know something I don't, Jaden Delora is not going to come from the rafters a la Sting and play. Woolsey has thoughts on Mendoza. Mendoza is Jake's guy. He is a really fantastic pivot for your alt builds because obviously 100 less than the Arizona quarterback. They're everybody and their moms, like I said, is going to play them. Hardly anyone would play Fernando Mendoza except for GPPs. He'll definitely see a pocket of ownership, but he's going to be far less owned than the top 2 quarterbacks on this slate. And the matchup against Wazoo is extremely fantasy friendly. Their defense is suspect at the best of times. His rushing upside is really going to cause them to be befuddled, and he is going to have some fun today, as they say. Coming off a very tough game in which he was just contained by Oregon. Still had 34 pass attempts in that game. He just got sacked a bunch and lost a fumble, so it kind of ruined the rest of his day. But if he hovers around 30, 35 pass attempts here against Wazoo, and I think he will, because Cam Ward is definitely in the mix to terrorize this Cal defense. And then if he rushes for 25 to 50 yards and scores on the ground, throws a couple of touchdowns at 5'9", he's obliterating that price. You could even run a lineup of Noah Fifta and Mendoza together and just absolutely nuke because you have all the salary savings, and then you can start paying up for any running back or wide receiver that you want. So that's a pretty good angle to attack the slate as well, if you wish, that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about today. Last minute look here. Oh, by the way, quick CBV note. I got a response from DraftKings. Our internal team, and this is about ticket gains. So Devontae Gaines is just his given name. Providence wanted to list him as ticket gains in all their media and literature. And it's caused DraftKings to not know how to score him properly. So I'm getting clarification if they're going to actually count the ticket gains stats later today, which will mean if they don't, then we can not roster him. If they do, then we can roster him at min price. So they are looking into it. It should only be like, I don't know, look at it, be like, okay, yes, we're gonna keep track of points for this kid. I don't know that they need to spend hours looking at it, but I'm just a guy, right? What do I know? So a little basketball note there for those of you who are playing the slate. All right. I think that's it. We've got about 7 minutes here before lock. Very, very good stuff. Appreciate that continued support by all. I think we have a fairly good handle on this week's slate. A lot of overlap, so be prepared to kind of boat race. Anyone who isn't aware of ownership, and be prepared to be in 2v2, 3v3 situations. But I do think running the 4 running back lineup is your best bet for leverage, because people just really aren't about that, except for people that watch this show or the FTN Network in our Discord. And I know it's kind of a weird concept, but we've, over the last year and a half, we've had a ton of success with it, and it really does work. So I think what it'll come down to is JRP versus RJ Harvey, and whoever outscores the other will lead to the winner of the slate. I hate having the fate of the slate on 1 to 2 players, but that's just the way it's going to be today. Next week's schedule: Monday night, Tuesday night, and Friday night CBB Super Show. Thursday night, Saturday morning CFB Super Show, and there will be a written main slate breakdown for every day of the week that there is an actual quote-unquote main slate. Thanks, guys. Make sure you hit that like button. Get over to FTN Daily. Check out that 50% off discount. Just hang out in the Discord with us. Give us a month, and let me show you how this Discord runs, and I promise you, you will absolutely love it, and you'll find yourself with more green screens than you ever could have imagined. Appreciate it, guys. Best of luck today. I will see you all next time. See ya.